to the podcast. My name is Blair Sinta. This is Recording Drums. This week, my guest is the great Chris McHugh, infamous Nashville session drummer. You would know him, obviously, from Keith Urban, Carrie Underwood, and 1,000 other Nashville artists. Just huge records. Chris has an incredible pocket, amazing sound. And man, we talked for just about 2.5 hours. So I'm actually splitting this podcast into two parts, this week and next week. He just kept talking. He's so knowledgeable, about drums, about recording, about producing. He's got strong opinions, but they're not overbaked. They're not, it's not like this is right and this is wrong. He just knows, he knows sound inside and out. He understands engineering. There was a record I discovered back in 1999 by an artist called Owsley, and I did not realize Chris played on it until, when I was doing some research on him before we talked. And we ended up talking a lot about that record and that experience and how that influenced him, to how he records these days and how he produces and his knowledge on sound. So pretty great, man. What a great guy. You'll hear it. He just wants to share and spread his knowledge. So it was pretty awesome to talk with him. As usual, courses are for sale. Lessons here, drum tracks here, whatever. But please share the podcast. Definitely helps if you share it on social media, and helps to give it reviews on iTunes or Spotify or Google or wherever you listen to it. All right, so here we go. Part 1 with session great Chris McHugh.
I don't know. We all learn from these things, so that's the good thing,
Yeah, well, I appreciate you being open to it, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a longtime fan, and dude, I just put 2 and 2 together. Well, a couple things. That I was a huge fan of that Owsley record that came out in '99, and I didn't know that was you until literally going through your discography and be like, "Oh shit!" That '90s power pop stuff, and that was one of my favorite records, like Jason Faulkner stuff, that Owsley thing. It's just like incredible writing,
Oh yeah, man. He was so fantastic. What's funny is that has a weird, through the years, there's these like different revivals these things get,
Yeah.
If anything, it just seems to kind of float back into the consciousness of people. So lately I've been getting, people reaching out, talking about that record again. And
interesting.
So, yeah.
And he was Did you have a musical history with him before that?
Basically, yeah. I mean, we had met just as kind of like sidemen playing on. I'm trying to think. I think we went and did a couple of gigs with a guy named Spencer Campbell, the bass player who played on a couple of those tracks on Will's record. He was dating a Christian artist named Kim Boyce.
Okay.
And man, I'm talking like this is like 86 or 87 I'm talking about. Like,
wow.
And we went and did like a weekend's worth of gigs. That's the first time I met Will.
Okay.
So Will and Spencer had known of each other. They worked with a singer. Oh man, it'll come to me. But they were in a band together, we just kind of met that way.
Yeah.
I mean, we wound up working together on a bunch of different stuff. Amy Grant and just different sessions and
okay. So
he
had a serious sideman history, which I guess I didn't realize. I mean, I just at that time I was like, oh, here's this guy who's a great writer, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he just was one of these kind of phenoms that could do anything really.
Okay.
Uh, I mean, he kind of play everything. He could sing anything. Um, he was a great arranger. But what's interesting about that record is that that's basically a home recording. He had a house over on Hobbs Road, and we did that record on most of it. There's a couple tracks that were cut in at the Sound Kitchen. I think I'm All Right and The Sky Is Falling were tracked at a real studio, if you will, but the rest was done at his house. He had a 16-track Studer A80.
Oh wow!
All the drums and bass and the rhythm guitars on that stuff, like on Oh No, the Radio and Come Out of Roses. That's all 15 IPS. You could punch in, but you can't punch out, kind of thing.
Right.
I
mean, the tone. I mean, the guitar tones, the drum tones, everything on that record. The vocal, the mixing, like everything is fucking great.
Yeah. It was nominated for best engineered non-classical. So.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, and the tracks that were cut at his house, we didn't have stereo overheads. We had a C12 as an overhead.
Okay. Well, that'll work.
The individual toms were mic'd. We had a mic on the snare, obviously in the kick drum. And some of those don't have hi-hat mics or anything.
With the C12 or C24, did you say?
A C12, just a mono. It just was mono.
I mean,
yeah, and only the kick and snare had. I think we rented a couple of like 1073s, I think.
Okay.
But the rest of the drums were cut through a damn Mackie console, dude. That's what that is.
Well,
yeah,
that's called having great ears, right?
Well, and in the room was it was one of these kind of like sort of built in the 40s and 50s kind of Nashville ranch layout houses, and not particularly high ceilings or anything like that, but good hollow floors. And so you get that real throaty, the thing that's all over every all the drum sounds. In particular, you can really hear it on Coming Up Roses. There's a thing in there in the
kind of
mid to low mid thing.
Yeah.
I want to call it, it kind of hits more in here, but and then there's a nice dip before the ultra lows.
Yep.
That reveals itself in those kind of houses. And and you gotta play to the room. I mean,
right.
And there was a good amount of trial and error. We didn't those tracks were not cut, quickly.
Okay.
We would listen to the way everything was going to tape, and because we knew that was it,
Right.
And we at the time, there was when we were cutting everything, there was no deal at all. That was all done just speculative, so it was a lot of fun, and it's amazing that it holds up even now,
I mean, I haven't heard those songs until this past week, until for over 15 years probably.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh yeah. You know what I mean? Oh No, the Radio, you're like, oh yeah, what a fucking great song, And
Yeah.
and to go back and listen to it with ears that I have now that I didn't have then, is
Yes.
is even more like those super bitey guitar tones that kind of like, maybe AC30 or Les Paul than AC30 or
It's
something,
Yeah, it's a matchless. It's a really, really early serial number matchless. The one that's basically an AC30 copy is most of that. There's also a lot of Marshall Plexi 50 watt on there, and I think we used maybe a deluxe or two, but for the most part, the real classic part of that, and certainly "Oh No, the Radio," that rhythm sound, that's the matchless.
I love that you remember that, man. I mean,
Well, it's funny, I am a guitar nerd, man. I mean, I recently produced Tom Bukovac solo record. That's called Plexi Soul. I mean, I love guitar. That was part of my affinity for working with Keith and for all those years. And, I love it. I don't know. I am a terrible guitar player. My fingers are way too fat to do anything on it, but I react to it. It is from being a kid and first hearing the Beatles and certainly with Zeppelin and Stones and AC/DC, but massive early. I mean, all Jeff Beck, but
right.
The early stuff really had a big impact on me, just sort of sonically. I can remember being really young, in the back of the car, in the AM radio, and in particular, certain records always sort of hit me in this kind of like sort of soul kind of way, and it's funny, man. That's just sort of sit there. It's sort of the thing of like I'm always sort of looking for the thing to kind of light the hairs up in the back of my neck,
Yeah.
I don't know if it probably has to do with sort of like internal harmonic kind of stuff,
I think so too. I mean, I'm very similar. Like, when I used to tour with Alanis Morissette, there was two guitar players in the band, and then the keyboard player was actually a great guitar player also. And the amount of vintage guitar shops I went to with those guys touring all over the world was like insane. So my guitar knowledge, just by osmosis, because that's all they would talk about on the bus. They were buying guitars like left and right. I was just learning about it without even knowing about it. But I think you're right. The harmonic side of something about the way strings ring together and distortion, there's something about it. Like I think with the tones, especially that you're talking about, like with air through an amp, they do something, internally,
Yeah, for sure, man. I really liken it to there's really something in particular in inside internal harmonics with a P bass in particular that I really. I mean, I know we're getting into minutia here, but
it's okay.
If you're kind of like I mean that's the thing that I'm really kind of looking for everything inside of that zone. Mid range is an area that I love to be inside of tonally. That's part of the thing that what's interesting is working with newer engineers now. A lot of these guys, I'm certainly old enough to be their dad, and you get into some zones with these things where there's a certain amount of dirt that I feel like you always have to have come through.
Yeah,
and you get in
that scoop, right? The mid-range, like highs and lows, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic if you want a fucking lifeless record, which is what it all is, right? I mean, look, there's exceptions to the rule on all of this stuff. And,
of course.
I'm just saying that for as many, it'd be nice to challenge the area a bit more rather than saying, well, it started, I guess, about maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I used to talk about, hey man, your toms are ringing. I'm like, yeah, they are.
I think longer in LA, but yes, for me it was like more like 15 years ago. Yeah.
Has it? Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe for so long, I kind of was just able to sort of get away with certain things, maybe it's been longer. I don't know. But, and then it got into what's funny is even the tea towel thing. I'm like, man, we did all of this. Like the first wave of that was around 89, 90, and then it went away and then it keeps coming back, but it was interesting. I had a younger engineer who's like, hey man, you ever try the tea towel thing? I was like, yes, long before you were born.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I get it, man. I mean, look, they're trying to do their job too, I mean, and the funny thing about this job, like what we do, is it's the balance of, we are part artists, but on the other side of it, it's just a service industry, and we got to do,
Yeah.
we need to accommodate, and we learn when we accommodate. I mean, that's the other thing too. Is like, there's many ways to look at this. We can just go, oh, well, fuck these guys. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. That doesn't work. I spent some time in that headspace, and certainly when I was younger too. But now it's sort of like, well, there's something good in this compromise. I'll learn something,
Well,
and there's always
everybody's got to go through it, right? It's like, and especially if that's the current thing, and that's what younger engineers, producers, musicians are excited about. That's where they're starting from.
Yes,
and it's like
you got to honor that,
know the history, right? Or even care about the history until a certain maturity level, or want to know.
Yes,
about it. Yeah.
And I should say, man, too, to even just kind of knock on myself a little bit, is that again, I'm rarely right. There's a certain, I mean, it's nice to have experience, but I'm also open to whatever, I have done a couple records recently where it is everything I'm doing is not what I would do.
In terms of
like, oh man, gear and everything. It's part of it has to do with kind of the budgetary limitations of the project in particular. Mm-hmm. But it's a Frankenstein put together kit just in a guy's own studio, and we're kind of cramped in there. The other players are in there too. The room might be 10 by 10, mm-hmm. maybe. Mm-hmm. And, the engineer's all about really kind of blown up. Everything's blown up and wacky, and I have to change quite a bit of how I play. Mm-hmm. But I'm rolling with it, because when I go into the control room and listen to it, it's like, oh shit, okay, this is a thing. Mm-hmm. There's something happening here. And that's the hard thing with when you have to separate yourself emotionally. You're preconceived, or what you're used to, or what, hey man, I got to have this in my headphones, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And kind of being more like, well, I'm going to let all that go. I'm just going to kind of trust what's going on here. This record is not going to be the kind of record of what I sort of preconceive, but the end result is that it's all music. Mm-hmm. And then it means something to the people that are making it, and in the artist specifically. And I got to honor that.
And you can sometimes find inspiration in that, of something you totally didn't expect,
Yeah. I mean, you always learn something along the way, I mean, that's the thing to remember when you are, anytime you're kind of stretching out into new territory. It's like, there's some fear that goes with you.
Mm-hmm.
It comes with you in that process. And you can allow that fear to either shut down what you're doing or go, hey, man, look, I know this is weird. And this is all just me talking to myself.
Sure.
It's like, this is weird. This is different. I don't necessarily, like this. But, I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen? If my career hasn't ended now already, then I don't know, I mean, maybe I need to kind of get away with things a lot more than I do. Who knows?
I mean, I feel like 9 times out of 10, there's usually either, well, let's say, hopefully, redeeming qualities in the music, or at least the people,
Yes,
or the situation, or the intent of what they're trying to do, and if you can find that, even in a situation that maybe be physically uncomfortable or sometimes mentally uncomfortable, or you're like, wow, we're polishing a turd here. There's at least maybe the people are awesome, like
they are, and that's in particular is really the payoff of the thing, and the end results, from what I hear, are like really cool. It's like, all right, you don't know what you're stumbling into too, I mean, that's the other thing too, is that's why you kind of got to let go of the constraints or whatever. And those are just kind of internal, it's thoughts and feelings about what I'm doing. And to just let go of that.
I mean, I think it's interesting to talk to, I mean, you're about 8 years older than me. So, but the time when your career started versus the time when mine kind of started to take off, it's like, it's pretty different because of how the music business changed, and you were in big studios in the early 90s, late 80s, and you've had to like deal with, well, I think there's 2 interesting things. One, you've been through this transformation of Nashville and been part of it, frankly. And then where we are now, from real studios to home studios, and that's a pretty massive transition in your career,
Absolutely. It is really fascinating. All of that. And the thing you got to remember, right. And with all of this is that, in any given genre at any given time, we can obsess over the way that music was made and how it was recorded. But honestly, now is the only time in history that you have as many options. Like, so when you go, you don't think that the Beatles would have used auto-tune, it's like, who knows, man? Like, I mean, shit, I don't know.
Yeah.
They used what they used because that's all there was.
Right.
When like a lot of those Strats that Hendrix played, he bought them off the fucking rack.
Right.
Like,
yeah, they
know
weren't
what I mean?
Special. They were there. Yeah. Yeah. It just happened to be a good year for Strats.
Ringo didn't use vintage gear. It was fucking brand new.
Like when you watch Get Back, like the amount of like kind of, I don't want to say not giving a shit, but they just weren't focused on
the lack of. And when they're asking McCartney about how to, he's like, I don't know what these fucking knobs do, man.
I mean, I was blown away watching that. I was like, oh my God, they're not even thinking about all the shit that we obsess over. Not even close. Yeah. All they care about was the song. They're sitting like 5 feet from each other. Ringo's like right there. Like, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. And you're dead on. All they care about is the song. I mean, that's really the thing, and did you notice that I think those are 602s that he's playing?
See, I thought maybe they were Peisty Ludwigs.
Oh, you're right. That's probably what they are. But they're definitely Peisty, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they sound like it. Like,
do you have any of those Peisty Ludwig hats or anything?
I don't. I just got another set. I've been kind of I got to quit hoarding gear, but It took me
Not a thing.
it took me about a year to find 13-inch heavy 602 blue labels.
Okay.
So I found one set that I use quite a bit, and then I just bought a fucking mint pair,
Okay.
like barely been played. But the old vintage, like other than that, so that what I'm talking about there, for those that don't know, those are what Stuart Copeland played
Okay.
all through. That is the Stuart Copeland hi-hat sound. Don't let anybody try to sell you anything different. That's exactly what
So
they are.
Not Rudes?
No.
Okay. Because you see pictures of him with those.
No, man.
Okay.
Dude, you hear these things and it is fucking red rain, dude.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Or every little thing she does is magic, or any of that.
All of them.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
look, they're right here.
Okay. I don't know Peisty well, so I'm a goth guy. So I'm just gonna say that as a
Yeah.
disclaimer.
Oh, and I want to say this too. I endorse Sabian. That's the only cymbal company I've ever endorsed, and that is mostly what I play. These are just choices as a session player, and as you know, and probably most people that are listening to this.
Yeah.
You have to have a wide variety of stuff, and there are certain instruments that you can't get that are like. You have to get it.
You have to get
Yeah. Look at these things, man.
And you're literally pulling them out of the package. Oh yeah. I know those from, I don't know, drum magazines or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But look how fucking clean that is, man.
I mean, did anybody play those? They've been sitting in a closet?
Well, that's the bottom. Here's the top.
Okay.
It has a little bit of mark on it. But man, I mean,
But you put them up and you're like, that's the thing.
Oh, brother. And that's the top. So
wow. I'm curious, man.
they're amazing. They are not cheap.
Hey man, and that goes back to that throaty snare sound, man. Like that sound on Ghost in the Machine, that snare sound. That frequency range. I mean, that is like.
There's a really great documentary on Air Montserrat. It's called Under the Volcano. You've probably seen it.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix, but that's really cool for anybody who's really curious about that stuff.
Yeah, I'm always trying to pause to see like where the mics are and like what the fuck's happening in that setup,
Man, and so much of that, it's just dudes' hands,
Right.
You can, how it is, man. I mean, you can you can put all the pieces together and you go, what's missing? Oh, that's right. I'm not Stuart Copeland.
Yeah. Nobody is. Nobody
is.
Yeah.
Nobody's even fucking close too, man. Here's the other thing too with that guy. What's the reference point? Like,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's a good question because like there's some Carlton Barrett in there, right? But like on cocaine, right?
Yeah, but he doesn't but tonality wise, like what's the
right? That's a good point. Right.
So much personality, man. I mean, like, he's one of those guys, one note and you know who it is.
Yeah, just a kick drum, right? Like the punch coming through his right foot is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh well, I know who that is. Yeah. Anyway, so back to the vintage Peisties. I don't have the Ludwig Peisty. The closest thing I have is I always carry a set of giant beats just as an option.
Yeah. These are really different. They're really thin, like super, and they're pretty trashy. But the only reason I thought maybe that was Ringo was playing was because they just look like that. There's a certain gloss to them.
They do. And that you can see in the lathing.
Yeah.
The tightness of it. Yeah. That those are not. And certainly the bell, when he goes to the bell, is suspiciously feisty
Yeah.
sounding.
I was buying those when they were like $75 on eBay. Like nobody,
I bet they are not that now.
they're not. But I got 16, 15, 14, 13, I think 12 too. Because I was
Oh,
like, oh,
wow.
I'm just gonna keep buying these because they're rad and they're cheap.
Yeah. I did find a set of uh, 66 pre New Beat
Ooh.
Zildjians. Those are actually right here too.
What are you doing, man?
Well, I'm kind of in this little area that I sort of it's as I exit the house. This is shit I grab on my way out,
Okay.
and it's all just sitting here.
Okay.
But they're hi-hat mediums is what they're called.
Oh wow.
I don't know if you can see.
Yep. Oh wow, look at that. I can see the faded right? Is that a faded?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It says hi-hat medium on there. And these are the 15s.
Oh wow.
And so they really have the Ringo slosh, but the eighth note, when you're playing eighth notes, man, it is Motown.
Yeah.
It's the thing, man.
Yeah.
And again, I have all kinds of Sabian hats that I use all the time too. These are just sort of particular things that the company didn't exist in '66, so it's like
you gotta get the right thing with. If somebody wants, more, you got to have the right thing, or it just doesn't sound right.
Yeah, and hats in particular, I find they really set up the way you play the rest of the kit.
Yep.
And I would imagine. I don't play really any jazz or bop or anything like that, but it's got to be the same way for ride cymbal. There, it's like, man, if the ride cymbal is exactly what you need it to be, then screw it. It's like you're going to spend most of your time on that instrument. It better be performing and efficient in the area dynamically and the way you want it to bloom. And what happens when you kind of blow off of it before you go and do a fill? It's got to have the right kind of like exit.
Yeah.
Energy,
I think there's two sides to that. I think one, the listener side, and also the player side, where if you're really trying to get era specific, at least for me, I've found that like if it's not coming back at me right, then it's hard for me to get in the zone because I just feel like it's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of like what you just described right there is a lot of what I had to get over on this other particular record that I was discussing about how everything, it's a kind of a Frankenstein drum set and everything's sort of thrown together, but it works in that room, but it's all kind of wrong to me. The sizes are all small. It's like 20, 12, 14, which I like that. But I mean, the heads are ancient. They don't want me to change them. It's a lot of weird, quirky kind of things like that, but I'm getting over it,
But it sounds big. It sounds.
Oh, well, it doesn't need to sound big. What it sounds like is it's got this kind of really roaring kind of energy to it, but it's pocketed. It sits in a great spot for the singers. There's two singers.
Okay.
So
I'm starting to notice, like in the past few months, people want less top end, and they're
thank God.
Yeah, they're trying to get into a certain space. I'm not really doing justice to like verbally but I think there's something happening where we're getting modern sounds that are a little more in your face, kick drums still like here, but now we're like people are getting over that shrill thing and they want the tape thing. But they don't want it to sound like Motown. They still need it to sound modern.
Yes.
In your face. Yeah.
Well, so here's the interesting thing. And Shannon Forrest is a really good buddy of mine. And but when I was talking, if you guys haven't heard that Bugavac solo record, it's called Plexi Soul. It's on Bandcamp. but so we track that at Shannon's on analog. He's got a bunch of yeah, he's got everything. He's got a bunch of Ampex machines out there. But one of the things that we spent a lot of time together just analyzing different records, we noticed a lot of our favorite stuff, even through 80s, 90s, early 2000s, there's a shelf on the top end. A lot of those really great sounding Peter Gabriel records, they really don't rise above a certain level on the top end.
Okay.
And it keeps the impact inside of like a listener's own, you know. I don't know how to really, I'm sure there's technical stuff as to what's going on there that are qualified, and probably Shannon could tell you kind of where the shelving point is, but that seems to me to be some real that's a great place to head towards, you know.
Yeah.
Because now it is unlimited as to what you can do, you know. I mean, the beauty of where we're at now technology wise is that it really is, it's back to the hands of the engineers, because you could do anything, right? So
right.
You better make it sound fucking great, because you can do that now with a damn Apollo in your house, you know. Anywhere.
Yeah.
You could do it on an airplane. So that's the beautiful thing. Right now, there's no excuses. So, you know, there was that weird period of moving from analog to digital. And, you know, and plenty of people would argue with you now that, that 44.1 actually sounds better. Working with Lord Alge on the Alge record, he was convinced that 44.1 was 16-bit 44.1 was way more rock and roll sounding.
Interesting.
But, you know, that's with him at the helm. It doesn't matter. That's the funny thing with all of this. And I think that's the thing I'm trying to communicate, is that now it doesn't matter. When someone says, well, I have a laptop and an Apollo, it's like, that doesn't matter.
Right.
It should sound great. Like, whatever you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been the fascinating thing. And that's kind of why I ended up with this podcast, because, like, you know, I've been doing this for a while, and it's, you know, for me, it's just all been self-teaching, you know, obviously bringing things from outside, but like, it got to a point I was like, wow, I'm getting pretty good at this. And I'm not the only one, and I was getting calls from other people. And like, the more I started to have to explain things verbally, I was like, wow, there is no limitation. It doesn't matter how big the room is. It doesn't matter.
No,
you know,
yeah.
like,
as long as you get rid of weird hanging frequencies, stuff that's causing phase issues inside of the room.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use anything to fix that.
Right.
Like, you don't have to buy a pre-made anything. You can start with, you know, bed sheets. You can,
right.
The greatest thing is the $10 packing blanket from Home Depot draped over a mic stand.
Right.
I've worked in major studios that had an unlimited design budget that sound horrible. Yeah. Like, you pull a drum out and you hit it and you're just like, mother of God.
You're like, this drum doesn't sound like this. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and what the bad thing, I'll tell you what, man, the bad thing about getting older and having done this long is that I can't hold that shit back. I hit the kick drum and I go, God, this room sounds like ass.
Right. Right.
You know, in the earshot of the studio manager, it's like, oh, well, we paid so and so. And it's just like, well, but, you know, so back to the practicality of what I'm saying, which is that if you have a room, then you're cutting drums at your house and you are fighting some of that stuff, man, the quickest thing is to go get a bunch of those blankets. And another cheap thing to do is to get, and you can find these used sometimes on, Craigslist or whatever, like a rolling wardrobe rack, just the little hanging chrome thing. It's got wheels on the bottom.
Right.
Take the packing blanket and a couple of clamps and just clamp them on and move them very close to the kit. Because what happens in terms of like a room is it folds on itself, right. So like you know all this, and I'm sure maybe a good portion of your listeners know this. So forgive me if I'm covering.
Oh, this is what it's about. So
basic info. Yeah. But you'll notice, you'll set your drums up, you get your home rig going, and you're testing everything out. And the first thing you might notice is like, shit, there's sort of like a lack of clarity in all the drums, not just in the overheads, but kind of everything is sort of like it doesn't seem to sound defined as I hear it in a studio, So you get those packing blankets. You can take a mic stand and kind of make it as high as it goes, and then put the thing in the T position.
Yep.
Drape the thing over, and man, I'm telling you, like, as close as you can get to your floor tom, and as close as you can get to your hat and snare, and then all of a sudden you're going to hear some amazing clarity and definition.
Yeah.
In your individual mics, your overhead, and your room mic too, because it sort of cleans up what's kind of going on in the room. And that is easily the most effective, inexpensive way to make your home room sound better.
Right. And then you get,
in my opinion,
you also get some separation between the room and your close sounds, and hopefully if your room sounds decent or half decent, I mean there's many ways to change it, but you just get that more separation, which is
totally,
yeah.
And it gets rid of the kind of wonky frequencies and shit that wants to float around anyway. You'll find it's easier to tune. And
what do you so what are you doing at home? I feel like I've seen two different spaces from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I had the house previous to this had a really elaborate room in it, and right now it's just a real basic kind of thing, but the meat and potatoes of it have stayed the same, which is I have a bunch of the Undertone audio stuff I've got.
Okay.
And then I've got Daking. So what I do is, kick and snare are the Undertone. Forgive me, model numbers are escaping me, but it's the mic pre's with the built-in EQs. That's what's on kick and snare. And then I have 8 channels of just the pre's. But for those of you guys that may not know the Undertone stuff, on his pre's, there's a wide variety of, there's transformers built in on the in and out of each channel.
Okay. And
the amount of color that you can get is phenomenal. And tricks you can do with gain, and they're just incredible pieces of gear. And I've got 4 of the Daking mic pre EQs.
The mic pre 4, or EQ.
The Dakings, I have 4 of the pre and EQ built together.
Okay.
And those I use on toms or kind of whatever. And then I think I have a couple channels of AEA mic pre's for some ribbon stuff,
Yeah, the ribbon mic pre's. Those are. I've never tried those. Those are cool. They may build great stuff.
Well, what's funny is sort of you can get the same kind of thing out of the Valentine stuff, out of the Undertone. it's unlimited.
Right.
But for a good, like the AA thing, it's not very expensive. I don't think a stereo channel is pretty, if you're going to pair that with like, even a moderate level, ribbon mic, the gain is really, really nice on the AEA. That's really the big thing about ribbon stuff is your input output gain, and how to preserve that as best as possible. The ribbons really like to respond. They respond well to the AEA, and I run like, rooms or sometimes hat through that or whatever.
Okay. What's your hat mic usually?
That the buyer,
M160.
what is, yeah. And, but I swapped that out with like,
Whatever.
anything. Yeah. And anything, just to sometimes a SM7,
Yep.
just for rejection or whatever. But I've been using that Husher thing for a while.
I don't know that.
Do I have that here? Oh, I do.
Oh, wow.
There's my Cherry Row pin on there too. Lord. Yeah, it's this this thing. Check it out. It sits on your hi-hat stand.
You don't wear it on your head?
No, you could probably.
Okay.
But
that's for separation from the snare?
Oh, dude.
Oh, wow.
Mind blower.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mind blower.
I'm on Amazon right now or whatever.
Well, it's a small little company, little Canadian company.
Okay.
HH Husher. On Instagram, he's just Luke Prefontaine, I think his name is. When we get off this call, I'll send you his Instagram. You wouldn't know that he makes the Husher from it, but you can talk to him directly. And
wow,
he's really perfected. This is the one that I have is a real prototype. He's changed it quite a bit, but it's easily. We've all bought these things, right? That are supposed to reject hi-hat out of the snare.
I've tried everything. Yeah.
This one actually works.
Okay.
It'll blow you away, man.
Okay.
It's just insane. No, he nailed it.
Okay.
But what he's working on though is how quickly you can kind of remove it from the hi-hat stand. That one that I have, it's all just in prototype form.
Okay.
So how you get it on and off the hi-hat stand is not as smooth as he's going to make it to where it's just a clip. Because that you have to pull the whole thing apart, thread it through the tube.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I mean, it's so good. I will take it around with me.
Deal. Yeah.
And you will grab frequencies on your snare drum that you couldn't before in post or when you're actually tracking.
You can boost 3 and 4 that you couldn't do before because it would get nasty.
Totally.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like I can confidently tell you it's a 15 dB cut.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me about your engineering. Are you self-taught or when did you start doing this mostly? You know what I mean? Like on your own.
Okay, so I'll say that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, really getting into it was that Owsley record.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, really kind of like, oh shit, okay, we could do this. We could do it ourselves, and we could do it to where it's competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved engineering and had the fortune to work with amazing engineers all through my career.
Mm-hmm.
And So it was kind of born a little bit out of necessity of like, hey, let's make a record without having to get anybody's money. And so Millard Powers is the third sort of ingredient in that Owsley record in terms of the engineering. He engineered most of that record, and we all kind of got into it together.
Okay.
And so that's where the curiosity really blossomed into like a real thing of like, we can really do this. And then it wasn't until probably, late 2000s that I kind of got into like a room, having my own room,
Okay.
And, but man, I mean, it's I kind of like to, I know a certain amount, and I don't want to get too much further into it. Like, I still would like to learn a lot more about phase and polarity, and get to the real secret.
Yeah.
With all of that, but what's funny about even all of that is at the end of the day is like, what does it sound like?
Right.
I've heard the debate of, well, certainly if you're looking at, your Pro Tools files, your audio files, whether they're on Pro Tools or Logic or whatever, each wave needs to go up.
Right.
The only problem with that is that, your snare drum, it can't go up, because if it does, then you're completely out of phase with everything else. But if you just look at the energy of like, how's the head reacting to the mic, so your toms are going to be out of phase with your overheads,
Mm-hmm.
blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, again, you just kind of got to listen. I do have that auto align plugin, which is kind of
Okay.
interesting. Have you seen that thing?
Well, it's always an interesting debate to me, the lining thing, which to me doesn't make any sense as a human, because I don't feel like that's how we hear drums or anything. For that
Oh no, dude, man, that thing could do some heinous shit. No, let's all be honest. That's a tool to be used sparingly, and it's a nice thing to kind of like to show you the potential of how you could time things to be more locked, inside of itself, if you will. But it's not always the answer.
Okay. So you
Like,
think sometimes it really works for certain types of tracks? Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah. Like, it's a great thing to just do for in and out kick, top and bottom snare.
I see. Okay. Not the whole.
No.
Okay.
No.
Interesting.
No,
selective with it. Okay.
Oh yeah, but that's out of a lot of time of doing stupid shit.
That's what we do.
It's also nice to a good experiment. If anybody has that plugin, a nice thing to do with it is if you first area to look at is hi-hat side overhead with snare,
mm-hmm.
time,
mm-hmm.
time right side overhead with left side. Listen to that. Okay. You eat little moves, man. You do little moves with that thing, boy, because it'll.
Well, the crazy thing about phase too is the panning part of it.
Yeah.
And when you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, mono drums. Fuck all this other shit. That's all I want to say. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, you don't do stereo overhead?
No, I do, but that's what's amazing. The thing that I think that most people are blown away at is when I tell them that a good portion of that Owsley record those are mono drums. Tom did some panning on the toms, like on Oh No, the radio, but the overhead is
Okay.
and because there's no hi-hat mic on most of those tracks, all that shit is mono. And so the impact is amazing. Now he took the mono room and he did some things in post where it's the illusion that it's stereo, but that's just almost delay kind of shit he's got going. That's imaging.
Right.
You know, so, but as far as impact, and I didn't mean to steal where you were going.
No. I'm laughing because like it's so fucking nerdy but fascinating to me, you know. And the funny thing is what you're like, I don't really want to get too much more deep into it, but what you're talking about is pretty fucking deep, and those are the things that make the big differences. You know, when I discovered the panning thing of my tom compared to where the overhead is, and you get it to around, you know, depending on where your mics are, but like 77, 78, it fucking opens up. And if you get past that, it comes back. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. There's a whole nother dimension that I didn't even realize I'd be considering, you know?
So here's a fun story. Years ago, this is right when Richard Dodd, the engineer, moved to town. For those who don't know, he did Tom Petty Wildflowers and tons of the Jeff Lynne stuff. Mm. He's a mastering engineer now. I think he might do a little bit of anybody will do anything, I think, but he's primarily a mastering engineer right now. But we tracked the thing on analog, and he cut the toms, and I only had 2 on this particular record they were doing, but he cut those in mono on the same track. And most of the drums were in mono. And when it came time to mix, he just panned the tom track.
Wow.
So what that does is they're all right here all the time. So you just put the toms on one track. I mean, you got to commit. You got to balance.
You thumb them.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. You only use the console like a summing mixer, and you're only going to one track. So when you're monitoring, when you're tracking, you just got one. Here's the toms, you know, is a mono track.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Dude, what has more, you know, the impact that like Rock Around the Clock has and Jailhouse Rock has, you know, none of the Beatles stuff was ever really in stereo. There's versions of that now. None of those drums were ever stereo.
Right.
And I only bring that up. There may be people that don't like Beatles music, but if you just talk about the sound of the drums and the impact that they have in the record,
yes,
you know, people may be sick of Beatles
in all different eras of Beatles too. Like revolver drums are one thing. The opening to Sgt. Pepper's, that beat with the maracas, that's got serious impact. And then the Abbey Road drums sound fantastic, but it's a totally different thing,
which everyone is still aping now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, mother of God.
Yeah.
50 years ago, you know, it's the same drum sounds. I mean, I get it. I love it too. But, you know, I do like exploring these kind of other eras, you know. I mean, I'm a massive fan of, you know, the Bruford era, Yes tones. Mm-hmm. If you guys search on the YouTube, there's an isolated drum track of Bruford playing the song Close to the Edge.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And you got to remember there's like a minute of nothing at the front because it's all this weird kind of shit going on, but that'll blow you away, that stuff. Yeah. And so at that time, the Close to the Edge record, you know, they were touring for Fragile at the time. So, and if anybody, you may not know the process of how they did those prog records, they would just jam and they would cut sections together. And often they would be from separate weeks. So they would go tour on the weekend in England and then go to the studio in the middle of the week. And then, so it'd be the same song, but the drums from the A section were from 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
And now the B section of the song, you know, so they changed subtly.
So
And
the
you'll hear
could be different or anything.
barely,
Yeah.
barely, but that's the most mind-blowing thing is the dude's snare tone, and in particular on that track. But I love those sounds, and they're very, you know, it's really about the mid-range, and you know, I really like. There's something that happens on these older recordings, and people are doing it now. There's Eric Valentine is excellent at doing this too, where they're able to kind of blow things up a little bit. Like,
yeah,
sometimes things get so clean, you lose the expression of the performer, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you can even hear on a Steely Dan record, you know, like on you know, like Green Earrings or something like that, with Purdie playing, when he goes in and does those fills, you can hear the preamps reacting. They're pushed to the point of distortion in there, you know, whether they were actually thinking about doing that or not, or if it was limitations of the gear. But I'm really intrigued with that kind of thing. That's the I guess, you know, that's what I don't like so much about when we get into this thing where shit gets so clean, tonality wise, that there's no room for stuff to blow up, you know. My favorite thing about being able to explore these old multi-tracks and everything is how fucked up everything is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, in the best way possible. Because when you hear the final thing, you don't hear that. And engineers used to mix, you know, there was a troubling spot in a performance or a tone, you just pull that,
right,
you pull that down and you favor another thing. You know?
Right. I mean, so the modern country thing is like super clean, right?
Oy, it is.
Yeah. But I mean, I think, and
a lot of that shit is done in post, you know.
You think so? I mean, you know so, right?
I know so. Yeah.
You think so? Yeah. So you feel like a lot of times you've done recordings and it comes back and you're kind of like, oh,
dude.
9 times out of 10.
I don't even know what that is. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm listening to.
Okay. I mean, I know that experience many times, especially
of course
when you leave the studio and you're like, oh my God, not only was it the best day, but that shit sounded amazing. And then you hear it.
No. Those days are.
You hear it next and you're like, wait, what? That has nothing to do with what represented the day we left tracking that.
God,
song.
yeah.
Yeah.
There it is. We're moving away from it.
I feel like
nice.
I've touched a nerve.
Well, no, it's like I didn't play that. I don't know what that is.
Okay.
I don't know who that is.
Right.
Like people are saying, well, oh, hey, I heard so-and-so, man, you sound great on that. Is that you? I'm like, fuck, I don't know.
Right.
Is it? Right. It just depends. It depends on the whole thing. And I'm not trying, look, that's just the way shit is. Like, my goal when I go in and play on something is to try to make it the best thing I can do at that moment. You know, I'm not responsible for what happens in post.
Right.
And never have been really, you know, like, I mean, there are records that I am, you know, either like a part of the band or kind of the team, or I'm actually producing. Yeah, I have my say in that, but the other stuff I don't, you know?
Yeah. Well, so
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anyway. I don't mean to even make that a point of discussion. I'm not trying to like, and man, that thing has been going on forever. Like, yeah. I mean, people started triggering samples, you know, that's mid 80s, dude. Right. It's always gone on. those are not my favorite records.
Right.
You know, gritted records that, that are sound replaced. Those aren't my favorite records.
Right.
They're certainly not the favorite records that I've played on, but I understand, as a product, as a unit, a thing that needs to be sold.
Yeah.
It's, you know what I mean? Like, so let's be kind of honest about the whole thing. My job is to come in and to provide a rhythm track that accommodates the song as best as possible.
Yeah.
That's it. The fact that anything comes out of that you're able to go, fucking hell, man, check that shit out. Like, we're so lucky, like, the things we do get to hear, so that's it. It all could be worse. Like, I know I'm kind of speaking philosophically, and I know I'm a bit sort of, I may not be making total sense. I guess what I'm trying to say is,
I'm following you, but yeah.
When we talk about like how amazing it is, right, from any genre, whether it is metal or punk or rock and roll or pop, that these incredible elevated performances made it to us. Because there's many reasons for it not to make it to us,
right?
And we're just in and with certain records and with certain record makers, there's this thought that if I remove all humanity from these performances, because they're doing it to everything, it isn't like it's just drummers,
right?
They line up everything,
right?
That the music will be better.
Yeah.
The
corporate.
I don't. It's corporate or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But thank God, not all music is that way. That's the thing. Is that there are some incredibly human records out, through the history of time, and even currently. Yeah. And that's what's great. Like, that's the thing to talk about, because if you're a young player, yes, it's very important to play as consistently as you can with the metronome, and to play as consistently as you can in terms of your velocity. That stuff helps records. Mm-hmm. But as a human being, you're going to hit a wall, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. Like, if someone wants to take the thing that much further in terms of technology, the producer or engineer, that's their prerogative. Mm-hmm. But we've lost, I feel like when you do that, you lose the character of an individual record. So like, when you start messing with feel, that's what the thing that defines one record from another. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what's always drawn me to players. It's like, and certain albums, they have a feel.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents on the whole thing, and there's nothing you can really necessarily do about it. What does help is when something that is very human, made on the floor, achieves international notoriety. Then people go, oh shit, that's right, the musician matters. So it comes and goes, man. I mean, I can remember when I first came to Nashville and I was doing sessions, the big thing was, you guys are all going to get replaced by the drum machine.
That didn't really happen.
Well, I mean, certain records that were better because they had a drum machine on it. Like, that's the other thing. It's like, you're just talking about music. There's certain music,
right,
that can be better because it is a drum machine, mm-hmm. and then other records that's the worst thing possible, mm-hmm. For it to be a drum machine and for it to be, completely lined up. And and all that kind of stuff. It's never going to go away. I think the thing is you learn to, as a drummer, I love listening to, and I've talked about this before, and some of these records are going to sound ancient now, but some of the stuff that I love that is all programmed, which is,
And that is the conclusion of part 1 with Chris McHugh. Part 2 coming next week.